The fluorescent lights in the pediatric wing cast everything in a cold, sterile glow that Maya Thompson had grown to hate over the past 6 months. She shifted in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her dark fingers drumming against the worn fabric of her purse as she checked the time on her phone for the 20th time in 10 minutes. 3:47 p.m. Her own daughter Zoe's appointment had been delayed again, which meant another hour of waiting in this place that smelled of disinfectant and broken dreams. Maya worked 2 jobs to keep their small apartment and put food on the table. During the day, she cleaned offices in downtown Atlanta, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans for people who barely acknowledged her existence. At night, she stocked shelves at a grocery store, her back aching as she arranged products that cost more than she made in a day. The medical bills from Zoe's treatment were mounting, each envelope that arrived in their mailbox another reminder of how precarious their situation had become. She glanced toward the play area where Zoe sat quietly, her 8-year-old frame looking smaller than it should. The chemotherapy had taken her beautiful curls months ago, and the bright pink headscarf Maya had bought her seemed to mock the pallor of her skin. Zoe was building something with blocks, her movements careful and deliberate, the way children learn to move when their bodies have betrayed them too early. Maya's attention was drawn to movement across the waiting room. A little girl was making her way toward the play area, moving with remarkable determination despite the fact that her left leg ended just below the knee. The prosthetic she wore was clearly expensive, with sophisticated joints and a natural skin tone that almost matched her own pale complexion. But what struck Maya most was the child's expression of pure concentration as she navigated around chairs and other obstacles. The girl appeared to be around 7 years old, with strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and bright blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent, but there was something about her careful movements and serious expression that suggested she understood struggle in a way most children her age never would. Maya watched as the girl approached the play area where Zoe was building. For a moment, both children looked at each other with the frank curiosity that only kids possess. Zoe's eyes dropped to the prosthetic leg, then back up to the girl's face with no judgment, only interest. "I'm Emma," the girl said, settling down beside Zoe with practiced ease. "What are you building?" "A castle," Zoe replied softly. "But I can't get the tower to stay up." Emma examined the unstable block construction with the seriousness of an engineer. "You need a better foundation. Here, let me help." Maya found herself smiling for the first time in weeks as she watched the 2 girls work together. Emma's movements were confident and sure, her disability clearly something she had learned to navigate with remarkable grace. There was something about her manner, a maturity that seemed beyond her years, yet she interacted with Zoe as a perfect peer. "My mom had to step out to make some phone calls," Emma said as they worked. "She gets really stressed when we are here." "My mom gets stressed too," Zoe whispered back. "She thinks I can't hear her crying in the bathroom, but I can." Maya's heart clenched at her daughter's words. She had thought she was being strong, hiding her fear and desperation behind smiles and optimistic words. But children see everything, understand more than adults give them credit for. "Does it hurt?" Zoe asked, her eyes drawn again to Emma's prosthetic. "Sometimes," Emma answered honestly. "But not as much as it used to. I was born like this, so I don't really remember having 2 legs. My dad says I'm actually luckier than most people because I never have to worry about breaking my left leg." Zoe giggled at this, the sound like music after months of silence and sadness. "That's funny. I never thought about it that way. My dad says there's always another way to look at things. Like, when other kids stare, I pretend I'm a pirate who lost her leg in an epic sea battle. Or sometimes I'm a robot who's part human and part machine." "That's so cool," Zoe breathed. "I wish I could be brave like you." Emma looked at Zoe seriously. "You are brave. Braver than me. I was born like this, so I never had a choice. But you're fighting something that came later, and that takes a different kind of courage." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This child's wisdom was extraordinary, her ability to see past surface differences and connect with Zoe on such a meaningful level. She wondered about Emma's parents, what kind of people they must be to raise such a remarkable daughter. The girls continued building their castle, chatting easily about everything from favorite colors to books they loved. Emma mentioned being homeschooled, traveling frequently with her father for his work, and missing having friends her own age. Zoe talked about missing school, about how some of her friends had stopped visiting when she got sick, and how lonely the long days of treatment could be. "I have an idea," Emma said suddenly. "What if we are both princesses in this castle? You can be the brave princess who's fighting an evil dragon, and I can be the clever princess who helps plan the strategy." "Yes!" Zoe exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with more enthusiasm than Maya had seen in months. "And maybe the dragon isn't really evil, just misunderstood, and we help him instead of fighting him." "Perfect," Emma agreed. "The best solutions usually help everyone, not just one side." As Maya watched her daughter play with genuine joy for the first time in so long, she felt a complex mix of gratitude and sadness. Emma's presence had given Zoe something precious, a connection with another child who understood difference and difficulty, who could see past the surface to the person underneath. But Maya also felt the familiar ache of inadequacy that had become her constant companion. This little girl's prosthetic probably cost more than Maya made in a year. Her clothes, her confident manner, the casual way she mentioned traveling with her father, everything about Emma spoke of a world that was completely foreign to Maya's experience. She tried not to let bitter thoughts creep in, but it was hard not to wonder what kind of life Zoe might have if Maya could provide better insurance, private rooms, experimental treatments that weren't covered by their basic medical plan. She pushed the thoughts away, focusing instead on her daughter's laughter, on the gift this moment represented. "Mom, look!" Zoe called out, gesturing to the impressive castle she and Emma had constructed. "Emma helped me make it perfect." "It's beautiful, baby," Maya called back, her voice thick with emotion. Emma looked over at Maya then, really looking at her for the first time since she'd arrived. Her blue eyes were serious and assessing, but not in the way Maya was used to from wealthy white children, not with judgment or fear, but with genuine curiosity. "Are you Zoe's mom?" Emma asked, walking over to Maya with that same determined gait. "I'm Emma. Your daughter is really smart. She figured out how to make the castle wall stronger just by watching how I reinforced the foundation." "Thank you, sweetheart," Maya said, surprised by the child's directness and poise. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's not kind, it's true," Emma corrected matter-of-factly. "My dad always says the truth isn't about being nice, it's about being accurate. And Zoe is definitely smart." Maya found herself genuinely charmed by this serious little girl. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He is," Emma said with complete confidence. "He should be here soon. He had to finish a meeting, but he never misses my appointments." There was something in the way Emma said it, a certainty that spoke of a child who had never doubted her father's presence or support. Maya felt another pang of complex emotion, joy for Emma, who clearly had that security, and sadness for all the ways her own circumstances made such reliability difficult. "What kind of work does your father do?" Maya asked, making conversation while keeping an eye on Zoe, who had returned to the play area and was now building a stable for the castle horses. "He owns companies," Emma replied with the vague answer of a child who knows their parents' work is important but doesn't quite understand the details. "He helps people solve problems and makes things better. He says business is just another way of helping people, except with math and spreadsheets." Maya smiled despite herself. "That sounds like a good way to think about it. He taught me that everyone has something valuable to offer, but sometimes people can't see it because they're looking at the wrong things. Like how people sometimes feel sorry for me because of my leg, but I can do lots of things they can't do." "What kind of things?" Maya asked, genuinely curious. "Well, I never have to worry about both feet getting cold," Emma said with a grin that transformed her serious face. "And I can take my leg off if I need to reach something in a tight space. Plus, I have a really good excuse if I ever want to skip running laps in gym class." Maya laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. "You are quite the problem solver." "My dad says problems are just puzzles waiting for the right solution. The trick is looking at them from different angles until you find the one that works." Before Maya could respond, she heard her name being called by one of the nurses. "Mrs. Thompson. We are ready for Zoe now." Maya's stomach clenched the way it always did when they called Zoe's name. Each appointment brought the possibility of good news or devastating updates, and the uncertainty never got easier to bear. "I have to go," Zoe said sadly to Emma, clearly reluctant to leave her new friend. "Maybe we'll see each other again," Emma said hopefully. "I come here every 3 weeks for checkups." Me too, Zoe said, brightening slightly. Maybe next time. As Maya gathered their things, she felt Emma watching her with those serious blue eyes. There was something almost protective in the child's gaze, as if she were mentally filing away details about Zoe and Maya for future reference. It was wonderful meeting you, Emma, Maya said genuinely. Thank you for making Zoe smile today. That means more to me than you know. She made me smile too, Emma replied. I hope her dragon gets better soon. Maya was still thinking about that unusual phrase as she and Zoe disappeared into the corridor leading to the treatment rooms. Fighting dragons seemed like a perfect way to describe what her daughter was going through, and she found herself grateful once again for the wisdom of the remarkable little girl they'd just met. Neither Maya nor Zoe looked back to see Emma watching them go with an expression far too thoughtful for a 7-year-old, already forming plans in her mind about how she might help her new friend fight her particular dragon. 3 weeks later, Maya sat in the same uncomfortable chair, but this time she found herself scanning the waiting room hopefully. Zoe's latest test results had been cautiously optimistic. The tumors were responding to treatment, but the financial pressure was becoming unbearable. Maya had picked up a third job working weekend catering events, which meant she was running on 4 hours of sleep most nights and consuming nothing but coffee and determination. She spotted Emma before Zoe did, the little girl entering the waiting room with that same purposeful walk. Today she wore a bright yellow dress with matching hair ribbons, and Maya noticed she had switched to a different prosthetic. This one had small LED lights embedded in the ankle that flickered with each step. Zoe! Emma called out, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. I was hoping you'd be here today. Zoe looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read, and Maya's heart lifted to see her daughter's immediate smile. Over the past 3 weeks, Zoe had mentioned Emma frequently, asking if she thought they'd see their castle friend again. Emma, you came back. Zoe rushed over as quickly as her current energy levels allowed. I love your leg. It lights up. Pretty cool, right? Emma said, lifting her dress slightly to show off the prosthetic. My prosthetist, that's the person who makes my legs, added them for my birthday last month. Dad said if I was going to be part robot, I might as well look the part. That's amazing, Zoe breathed. How many different legs do you have? 4 right now. This light-up one, my everyday one, my swimming one, and my sports one for running and climbing. Dad says when I get older, I can get one with Bluetooth speakers built in. Maya watched the easy interaction between the girls and marveled again at Emma's matter-of-fact approach to her disability. There was no self-pity or attention-seeking, just practical solutions and creative adaptations. How have you been feeling? Emma asked Zoe with the directness Maya had noticed before. Better some days, worse others, Zoe answered honestly. The medicine makes me feel sick sometimes, but Mom says it's working. That's good news about it working, Emma said seriously. The sick feeling will get better. My friend Marcus went through something similar when we lived in California. He said the worst part wasn't the medicine making him feel bad, but people treating him like he was fragile all the time. Maya's eyebrows rose. This child seemed to have friends in multiple states and experience with serious medical situations that went far beyond typical childhood encounters. People do treat me differently now, Zoe admitted quietly. Like I might break if they talk too loud or laugh too much. That's silly, Emma declared. You're not fragile. You're fighting something really hard, which makes you strong, not breakable. People just don't know the difference sometimes. As the girls settled into the play area again, Maya noticed a woman approaching from the corridor. She was clearly Emma's mother, the same strawberry blonde hair, though styled in an expensive cut, and wearing clothes that screamed designer label. But there was something in her posture, a tension around her eyes, that spoke of stress and worry that transcended financial circumstances. Emma, darling, there you are, the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent Maya couldn't place. I was looking everywhere for you. I'm playing with Zoe, Mom. Remember I told you about her? She's the brave princess fighting the dragon. The woman's eyes found Maya, and, for a moment there was that familiar assessment that Maya had learned to recognize, the quick cataloguing of her discount store clothes, her worn purse, the fatigue that no amount of concealer could hide. But, unlike many encounters of this type, the judgment in the woman's eyes seemed to soften into something more like understanding. Hello, she said, extending a manicured hand to Maya.
I'm Catherine Winchester.
Emma has told me so much about Zoe and how clever she is. Maya Thompson, Maya replied, shaking the offered hand. Emma is a wonderful child. She's been so kind to Zoe. The kindness goes both ways, Catherine said, glancing at the girls who were now deep in discussion about the best way to build a bridge between two block towers. Emma doesn't often connect with children her own age. She's been looking forward to today all week. Maya studied Catherine's face, noting the expensive makeup that couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly despite her composed demeanor. Whatever struggles this family faced, they weren't all solved by money. Are you here alone today? Catherine asked, settling into the chair next to Maya. Yes, it's just me and Zoe, Maya replied, wondering if the question carried judgment or was simply conversation. That must be incredibly difficult, Catherine said softly. I can barely handle these appointments, and I have a full support system. You're managing all of this on your own. There was something in Catherine's tone that made Maya look at her more carefully. This wasn't the polite sympathy of someone offering empty platitudes. This sounded like recognition from someone who understood the weight of fear and responsibility. We manage, Maya said carefully. Some days are harder than others. I imagine they are, Catherine murmured. Emma was born with her limb difference, so we've been dealing with medical appointments and procedures since day one. But, even with all our resources, there are nights I lie awake wondering if I'm making the right decisions, if I'm strong enough, if I'm somehow failing her. Maya was surprised by the honesty. You're clearly not failing her. Emma is remarkable, confident, kind, wise beyond her years. You should be proud. I am proud, Catherine said, watching Emma demonstrate how to make a block tower more stable by adjusting the foundation. But I also know that much of who she is comes from her own strength, not from anything I've done. Children facing challenges often develop remarkable resilience. That's true, Maya agreed, thinking of how Zoe had handled her diagnosis with a maturity that broke Maya's heart. Sometimes I think kids are braver than adults. Absolutely, Catherine said. Emma taught me that. When she was 5, she asked me why I cried after her doctor appointments, but she didn't. I didn't have a good answer. Maya felt something shift in her perception of this elegant woman. The expensive clothes and perfect hair remained, but underneath was a mother dealing with the same fears and uncertainties that kept Maya awake at night. Mrs. Thompson. A nurse appeared at the door. We need to speak with you about scheduling Zoe's next treatment cycle. Maya's stomach dropped. In her experience, when they needed to speak with you about scheduling, it usually meant insurance complications or financial issues that required immediate resolution. I'll be right back, she told Catherine, then turned to Zoe. Keep playing, baby. I'll just be a few minutes. But Maya knew from Catherine's sympathetic expression and Emma's suddenly serious face that her worry was written clearly across her features. She followed the nurse down the corridor with the same dread that had become her constant companion. 20 minutes later, Maya returned to the waiting room fighting back tears of frustration and anger. The insurance company was balking at covering the next phase of Zoe's treatment, claiming they needed additional documentation proving the therapy was necessary. The appeals process could take weeks, time Zoe didn't have, and the out-of-pocket cost for continuing treatment was more than Maya's annual salary. She found Catherine exactly where she'd left her, but now Emma was sitting beside her mother while Zoe remained in the play area, building elaborate structures with intense concentration. Everything all right? Catherine asked quietly, and Maya realized her distress must be obvious. Insurance issues, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. Nothing that can't be worked out. But Catherine's expression suggested she wasn't buying the dismissive explanation. Is there anything that can be done to help resolve it more quickly? Maya looked at this woman who seemed genuinely concerned and felt a sudden urge to laugh hysterically. What could be done? She could win the lottery, marry a millionaire, or discover she had a long-lost wealthy relative. Short of impossible scenarios, she was looking at choosing between Zoe's treatment and keeping a roof over their heads. I'm sorry, Maya said, realizing she'd been quiet too long. It's just bureaucratic nonsense. You know how these things go. I do know, Catherine said quietly. And I also know that bureaucratic nonsense can be life and death when you're dealing with a child's health. Before Maya could respond, Emma appeared beside them, Having moved with that silent grace Maya was learning was characteristic of her. Is everything okay with Zoe's dragon fight? Emma asked, looking between the two women with those perceptive blue eyes. The doctors need to fill out some extra paperwork before they can continue helping her, Catherine explained gently. That's stupid, Emma declared with 7-year-old bluntness. If someone needs help, you help them. You don't make them wait for paperwork. It is stupid, Catherine agreed, earning a surprised look from Maya. Unfortunately, the adult world is full of stupid rules that get in the way of helping people. Then, adults should change the rules, Emma said matter-of-factly. Some adults do try to change them, Catherine said, glancing at Maya. But it takes time, and sometimes people need help right now, not later. Maya felt tears threatening again at the kindness in Catherine's voice, at Emma's indignation on Zoe's behalf, at the unfairness of a system that put bureaucracy before a child's life. She excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment to compose herself before facing Zoe again. When she returned, she found Catherine and Emma engaged in quiet conversation. Emma looked up as Maya approached, her expression unusually serious. Mom says you and Zoe are having problems with money for her treatment, Emma said with startling directness. Emma, Catherine said softly. But the child continued. Dad always says problems are just puzzles, and every puzzle has a solution. Maybe we can help solve this one. Maya felt her face flush with embarrassment and pride warring in her chest. That's very sweet, Emma, but it's not sweet, it's logical, Emma interrupted. We have money and you need money for Zoe's medicine. Dad says money is supposed to flow to where it can do the most good, and helping Zoe get better seems like really good use of money. Maya looked at Catherine, expecting to see embarrassment at her daughter's boldness, but instead found her expression of thoughtful consideration. Emma's not wrong about the logic, Catherine said carefully, though these situations are more complicated than simple mathematical equations. Why? Emma asked. If Zoe needs help and we can give help, why is that complicated? Maya crouched down to Emma's eye level, touched by the child's earnest desire to help but needing to maintain some dignity. Because accepting help from people is complicated, especially when you don't know them very well. It can make people feel like they owe you something, and that changes relationships. Emma considered this seriously. But Zoe doesn't owe me anything. She's my friend. Friends help each other. That's true, Maya agreed. But your parents don't know us, and helping with medical costs is a very big thing. So we get to know each other better, Emma said simply. Problem solved. Maya found herself smiling despite everything. You make it sound so easy. Most things are easy, Emma said with confidence. Adults just make them complicated because they worry about things that don't matter. Catherine laughed softly. She's not entirely wrong. We do tend to overcomplicate things. Maya looked at this unlikely pair, the wealthy mother and the wise child, and felt something shift in her chest. Not the desperate gratitude of someone drowning who's been thrown a rope, but something warmer and more complex. These people saw Zoe and saw value, saw a child worth helping not out of pity but out of genuine care. Why don't we start with getting to know each other better? Catherine suggested. Emma's father should be here soon. Perhaps you'd both like to join us for coffee in the hospital cafe. Maya glanced at Zoe, who was watching the conversation with interest, and made a decision that surprised her. We'd like that very much. As if summoned by their conversation, a tall figure appeared in the waiting room doorway. Even from a distance, Maya could see this had to be Emma's father, the same confident posture, the same assessing intelligence in his eyes. He was scanning the room, clearly looking for his daughter, and, when his gaze landed on Emma, his whole face transformed with a smile that spoke of absolute devotion. Daddy! Emma called out, waving him over with uncharacteristic excitement. Come meet Zoe and her mom. We are going to have coffee and solve problems. As the man approached, Maya noticed several things simultaneously. He moved with the assured stride of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. His clothes were casual but clearly expensive, and, despite his obvious wealth and power, he immediately dropped to one knee when he reached Emma, giving her his complete attention. Tell me about these problems we are solving, princess, he said, and Maya heard warmth in his voice that spoke of a father who took his daughter's concerns seriously, regardless of how childish they might seem to others. Maya had no idea that she was about to meet a man whose name appeared regularly in Forbes magazine, whose business decisions affected thousands of jobs, and whose net worth could fund a small country's healthcare system. All she knew was that Emma's father had kind eyes and a patient smile, and, for the first time in months, she felt a flutter of hope that maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. The man who approached them moved with quiet confidence, and Maya noticed that conversations seemed to pause slightly as he passed. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but there was something about his presence that commanded attention. His dark hair was graying at the temples, and she guessed he was somewhere in his early 40s. What struck her most was how his entire demeanor shifted when he focused on Emma, transforming from business executive to devoted father in an instant. "Dad, this is Zoe and her mom, Maya," Emma announced, practically vibrating with excitement. "Zoe is the brave princess I told you about, the one fighting the dragon. And Maya works really hard and is super nice, and they need help with Zoe's medicine money, and I told them you're good at solving problems." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment at Emma's enthusiastic introduction. She started to speak, to somehow minimize or explain away the financial desperation her 7-year-old advocate had just announced, but the man's response surprised her. "It's a pleasure to meet you both," he said, extending his hand to Maya first, then crouching down to shake hands with Zoe with the same courtesy he'd shown her mother.
I'm James Winchester.
Emma's told me quite a lot about Zoe's architectural skills and creative problem-solving abilities. "He means I'm good at building stuff," Zoe whispered to Maya, clearly pleased by the praise. "I meant exactly that," James confirmed with a smile. "Emma was quite impressed by your castle designs and your innovative approach to structural stability." Maya found herself relaxing slightly despite her embarrassment. James Winchester's manner was warm without being patronizing, and he spoke to Zoe as if her opinions and accomplishments mattered, which immediately endeared him to her protective mother's heart. "Emma mentioned coffee," James continued, looking at Catherine. "Shall we relocate somewhere more comfortable? Hospital waiting rooms aren't exactly conducive to proper conversation." "If you're sure we are not imposing," Maya said carefully, still feeling overwhelmed by the unexpected turn the day had taken. "Nonsense," Catherine said briskly, gathering her purse. "Emma's been talking about Zoe for 3 weeks. I'm curious to hear more about this dragon-fighting business." As they made their way to the hospital's cafe, Maya noticed how naturally James adapted his pace to accommodate both girls, and how he positioned himself to ensure Emma felt secure navigating the crowded corridors. It wasn't hovering or overprotection. It was simply the unconscious awareness of a parent who understood his child's needs. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, and they chose a table by the window overlooking a small garden. James insisted on buying coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for the girls, waving away Maya's attempt to contribute money with a casual gesture that suggested the thought hadn't even occurred to him. "So," James said once they were all settled, "Emma tells me you're dealing with some insurance complications regarding Zoe's treatment." Maya felt that familiar surge of defensive pride mixed with desperate need. "It's just a temporary delay," she said carefully. "These things usually work themselves out." James studied her with intelligent grey eyes that seemed to see more than she was comfortable revealing. "In my experience, insurance companies don't typically resolve complications in favor of patients without significant pressure. How long are they estimating for resolution?" "They said 4 to 6 weeks for the appeals process," Maya admitted reluctantly. "That's unacceptable," Catherine said firmly. "What's Zoe's treatment timeline?" Maya glanced at Zoe, who was deep in conversation with Emma about whether dragons preferred chocolate or vanilla ice cream. "She needs to start the next phase within 2 weeks to maintain the progress we've made." James leaned back in his chair, and Maya could almost see his mind working through the problem with the same systematic approach Emma had described. "What's the specific objection from the insurance company?" "They want additional documentation proving the treatment is necessary," Maya said, then added with barely controlled frustration, as if fighting cancer isn't sufficient proof of necessity. "The issue isn't medical necessity," James said quietly. "It's cost control. They're hoping the delay will either result in you finding alternative funding or—" He trailed off, clearly not wanting to finish that sentence. "Or what?" Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Or the problem resolves itself through means that don't require their payment," James said bluntly but gently. Maya felt sick. She had known, on some level, that the insurance company was playing a numbers game with her daughter's life, but hearing it stated so plainly made the reality impossible to ignore. "That's evil," Emma announced, having apparently been listening despite her conversation with Zoe. "You can't just decide not to help people because it costs money." "Unfortunately, sweetheart, that's exactly how some people make decisions," James said to his daughter. "It's one of the things we try to change through our foundation work." "Foundation work?" Maya asked, curious despite herself. "Dad has a foundation that helps people," Emma explained. "It's like a giant piggy bank, except instead of buying toys, it buys help for people who need it." James smiled at his daughter's description. "That's actually not a bad way to put it. The Winchester Foundation focuses on several areas, including pediatric medical care and research." Maya felt a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. "What kind of pediatric medical care?" "We fund treatment for children whose families are facing financial barriers to care," Catherine explained. "James started the foundation after Emma was born, and we experienced firsthand how difficult it can be to navigate medical care, even with significant resources. Even with money, it's complicated and scary," James added. "I can't imagine trying to manage it without financial resources. The system is fundamentally broken." Maya looked around the table at these three people who had entered her life by pure chance just an hour ago, and who were now discussing Zoe's medical care as if her daughter's well-being was their personal responsibility. It felt surreal, like a dream she was afraid to trust. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Are you saying your foundation might be able to help with Zoe's treatment?" "I'm saying that helping families like yours is exactly why the foundation exists," James replied. "But, before we talk about logistics, I'd like to know more about you and Zoe. Emma's given me her perspective, but I'd like to hear yours." Maya felt overwhelmed by the direct attention, by the implication that her story mattered to these strangers. "I don't know what you want to know." "Tell me about Zoe," James said simply. "What's she like when she's not fighting dragons?" Maya glanced at her daughter, who was now explaining to Emma the plot of her favorite book series with animated gestures. Despite her fatigue and the effects of treatment, Zoe's intelligence and personality shone through. "She's brilliant," Maya said, her voice soft with love and pride. "She was reading at a 4th grade level when she was 5. She loves science and wants to be a marine biologist so she can help save the oceans. She's kind to everyone, animals, other kids, even adults who are having bad days. She's brave in ways I never could be at her age, or even now." "What does she love most?" Catherine asked. "Learning new things," Maya said without hesitation. "She asks constant questions about everything. How things work, why people make the choices they do, what happens to water when it evaporates. Before she got sick, she would spend hours at the library reading about whatever had captured her interest that week." "And what about you?" James asked. "What did you do before Zoe's illness?" Maya felt the familiar shame that accompanied discussions of her employment situation. "I worked in customer service for a telecommunications company. When Zoe was diagnosed, I had to take so much time off for appointments and treatment that I eventually lost the job. Now I work multiple part-time. Sometimes the most extraordinary moments happen in the most ordinary places. Sometimes a chance encounter between strangers can change everything. Sometimes what appears to be coincidence is actually destiny unfolding. This is the true story of how a simple act of kindness in a hospital waiting room created ripples that would transform multiple lives forever. It's about seeing beyond appearances, about the courage of a 7-year-old girl, and about how genuine human compassion can bridge any gap, whether it's race, class, or circumstance. Most importantly, it's about discovering that the person sitting next to you might just be exactly who you both needed to meet.